Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be going through my favorite brushes that I use for my everyday makeup routine. These are the brushes I feel everyone should have in their collection. I'm going to specify the ones that I think are non-dupable and others that you can find alternatives to, because there's so many great high-end and inexpensive brands that provide a wonderful brush. The inexpensive ones may not last as long as the really high quality and expensive ones, but they still provide a wonderful end product, and that's the most important thing. The tools that you use for your makeup is so important, especially if you're a beginner. It'll just make it that much easier and more fun, because sometimes people get really frustrated with how their makeup turns out. And sometimes it's not even the skill, it's the brush that you're using. I'm going to start by giving you some set recommendations that make it way more digestible and less intimidating, especially as a beginner or just a regular consumer for makeup, because there's so many options. These are my Artist Kit Company jumbo clips. Now, my favorite drugstore brands for brushes. I'm going to start by ranking them. So number one is Ecotools. This is an excellent brand. Some of my favorite brushes from Ecotools have lasted me literally 5+ years, like this one right here. And as you can see, there's no frayed edges, there's no lost bristles, and most importantly, it has remained soft. Some people that ask me for brush recommendations always specify I need it for my sensitive skin. This is the first brand that I recommend. I'm gonna put 2 sets from Ecotools that I absolutely love, and I believe you use every single brush, because so many sets have like 25 brushes in them. First of all, they overwhelm you with the number, and second of all, you don't even use all of them. But these 2 sets are great for the everyday makeup wearer. Next one is Real Techniques. I've noticed some inconsistency between the softness of their brushes between sets. They can be kind of prickly and really irritate the skin, but the shape is there. And for some brushes, I look past the prickliness and I just love the way that it applies some products. But I will specify my favorite ones from each collection as I go on throughout the video. Now, a little bit higher on the tier with price as well as quality is the Morphe X Ariel brush set. I recommend the full one because you will find use for each brush, especially if you want to continue learning different makeup skills. That brush set is truly amazing for all parts of the face. You get a bang for your buck. They are great quality, and it will honestly inspire you to master your craft a little bit better, or your everyday makeup routine if that's all you want to do. My last recommendation that I've personally tested and loved, and I would confidently say is my favorite brush set and brand that I've tried thus far, is the Spectrum Collection Katie Jane Hughes 25-piece brush set. That one does have a lot of options in it, so you can get the one, I believe it's a 12-piece set, which I think is way more than enough for the everyday makeup wearer. Their brushes are so soft, amazing quality. Personally, I think for the quality that you're getting, it's not that expensive for what they're actually worth. Now let's finally get started on my everyday makeup routine, where I'm going to talk about my specific favorites that I've really filtered through the sets, the trial and errors of each brand, and I will explain how to use each brush, what they're good for, and who it's good for. The Makeup by Ariel set that I mentioned earlier comes with a sponge, and that's honestly the first tool that I want to talk about and its importance, especially if you have dry and or sensitive skin. Sponges are most likely going to be better for you as opposed to brushes, because they are providing light moisture with the foundation or whatever you're applying on your face, versus a brush, which is naturally dry, of course. It's going to slightly agitate your skin, and this is a tip that I learned from Painted by Spencer here on YouTube. Even if I don't see any apparent flakes on my skin, but I know my skin is kind of going through it dryness wise, I like to go in with a sponge versus a brush. I will link some of my favorite sponges, and not all sponges are the same. Not all sponges are the same, so I will leave my favorite ones down below. If your skin though is normal, combo, or simply you've prepped it well, then you have clearance to go in with a brush. All right, we're gonna start off really strong and with my favorite brush literally ever, the Makeup by Mario F4 brush. This I can do a whole face with. The thing that makes this brush so unique is the perfect shape, because I have had brushes that have this slant, but the size matters in this case. The larger side provides the perfect amount of surface area and fluffiness to where you can buff or pat on your cheeks like as a cream blush, powder all over your skin, and the smaller side is dense enough to where you can blend a full coverage concealer or slightly buff it out with the rest of your makeup with the edges around it. So with any product that I use, I deposit it on the back of my hand, and the reason that I'm specifying this is because it plays such a big role in how your brushes also perform. Now, for example, I'm going in with my contour slash bronzer first, and you can go in with either side depending on how specific you want the placement. If you're going in with a contour product, this is perfect because it hugs the cheekbone right there, so it creates that hollow from the top of your ear slowly downwards. If you want something more diffused and you're using something more bronzy, then you would go in with the larger side of the brush. Let's go in with the larger side. I'm lightly picking it up. And because this is sort of a flat edge and I've applied it evenly on the back of my hand, this is now going to apply evenly on my face. So I'm not going to have to overly buff or irritate my skin underneath. The best way I can describe it is that this brush is basically blending for you. All you have to do is tap, and then as you have less product on your brush, because it's fluffy enough, you can go in and slightly buff upwards and outwards. This covers such a large area so quickly and it blends seamlessly. Now we are going to go in with our blush and concealer. This is not sponsored by Makeup by Mario. Literally, I wish, but his products are just so consumer friendly and universal that it makes the makeup routine that much easier. I'm picking up the cream blush from the back of my hand. Look at how seamless the blend is from the blush to the bronzer already, because it's large enough that it covers that surface area on both parts of the face. Next is concealer. Now, this is a new discovery that I have fallen in love with. This is the Saie double-ended sculpting brush, I believe it's called. This is phenomenal. It's much smaller than the Makeup by Mario one, but honestly, I have a pretty large face, so that's why this one works better for me and it has a faster application. But if you have a smaller face or if you want a little bit more control with your product, this is the brush for you. I fell in love with the shape of the larger side because you can really hug underneath your cheekbone and evenly apply, for example, your blush. I'm going to go in with my Maybelline Fit Me Concealer, and I properly hydrated my skin before starting the makeup tutorial. And the reason that I prefaced that is because if you do have very dry under eyes, which is normal, first of all, you would go in with an eye cream to help with that. But you will see that a lot of people use beauty blenders underneath the eyes because it's a drier and more sensitive area. When would I use a brush for concealer? 1, if my under eye is properly hydrated. 2, if I want a more full coverage application underneath the eye. And 3, when I'm using a more hydrating concealer. The reason that I stress that, even with really dewy foundations, I don't like to use a beauty blender because the moisture of the beauty blender and the moisture of the foundation almost doesn't allow the foundation to adhere onto the skin properly. So I want to balance out that moisture with the dry brush and the dewy foundation, so it provides a beautiful satin finish on the skin. Same thing goes for the under eyes. So this is a more hydrating and creamy concealer, so I want to keep that hydration and coverage by using a brush and pressing motions under there. And this one fits perfectly underneath the eye and right here along the nose, and it's super soft. Let's go in with the Makeup by Mario one. This is a little harder to reach underneath the eye, but it does blend it out seamlessly and keeps the coverage. Now, time to set the under eyes. I genuinely feel like, apart from eyeshadow brushes, there's literally millions. Under eye brushes are a beast of their own. There are so many out there and what people prefer differently. Just keep in mind that the whole point to set your under eye area is to make sure that your creasing is delayed as much as possible. How you achieve that, feel free to explore. I'm just going to give you the easiest recommendation and what I've found works best for me. Now, you will see a lot of people use brushes like this, which they're like a smaller domed concealer brush that you can also actually use for blending out the liquid concealer. The only problem that I have with these brushes is that because they're more on the fluffy side, they apply a thinner layer of powder. So that only works for if you're going with a super natural look. But if you keep building your concealer and you want it to stay all day, you need a little bit more powder. And to compensate for that, you're gonna have to use a more dense brush so that you really lock in that concealer underneath your eyes. So this is good for a light layer, and we can start off with that. Now, a more recent technique that I've been using probably in the past year or a couple months is using a flat foundation brush for my first layer of powder underneath my eyes. This is from Ecotools, and it's the classic foundation brush, which is perfect for painting on a thin layer of foundation and then going in with a beauty blender or a kabuki brush and blending it out. But in addition to that, I like to use this almost in place of a powder puff, which powder puffs are great on their own, and I'll show you how to use them. But with this, because it's not fluffy, it doesn't allow for any powder to be lost. So all of the powder is going to be concentrated on one face of the brush, in turn, really pressing and setting your concealer well underneath your eyes. Pick up the powder just like this, and you do not want to go in right away with this amount of powder because it's going to create a really cakey mess. You want to go on the back of your hand, work the powder into the brush, which is now an even layer and much less product, and make sure that there's no creases underneath your eyes, and right away start pressing that powder into the creases, back and forth, which is the most important motion to ensure longevity underneath your eyes. Now let me show you how it would look like if I were using a fluffier brush, i.e. less concealer. I would go in with a lot of powder, working it into the brush just like that, dusting off any excess again in the palm of my hand, and then using those same pressing motions underneath the eye. And I'm focusing a lot on the technique and really explaining in depth these basic principles because the way you use your brush is just as important to what brush you're using. So this brush is from Shein and it doesn't have a number, but a similar one that I'm sure you've seen all over and that would provide just as good of an application is the Real Techniques 402. When you pick up the powder with your powder puff, again, it's going to create a very uneven and layer on the puff. That's when you would go into the back of your hand, really work it inside the puff, fold it, and press it along your under eye area. Quite firmly actually, because you want to lock that concealer there and not allow it to move with any moisture around. Now for my favorite cheek brushes, specifically for powder products. The first one is from the Katie Jane Hughes and Spectrum collection. This is the 01 brush. This is slightly denser than a typical face brush, but it's so soft. And this slight point at the top provides the perfect amount of precision if you want to bronze or even provide a nice layer of blush. But it's also large enough to where you can powder your face all over. Next one is a great overall cheek brush because it does everything. This is the Makeup by Mario F3 brush. It is long enough to where you can really blend out the product, but also small enough to where you can concentrate it on the cheek or right underneath the cheekbone for some contour or bronzer. The other side of the brush is actually perfect for a light dusting of glow, or if you really wanted to, you can even use this one to blend out your concealer and set it. So honestly, this is your face makeup set. My last recommendation, again, anything from Ecotools. Two of my favorites are the full setting brush because this one similarly is smaller, like the Makeup by Mario, and it has this slight curved shape at the top so I can really be precise. This larger one, the Precision Powder, I like to use for my bronzers because it provides a really fast application and even. Because once again, it has this larger surface area on the top. Now actually, if all of these brushes had a baby, it would be this one right here. Now, you're probably gonna ask, okay, Anna, which one would you get if you were traveling or if you were just to take one on a long vacation? It would be this one. However, the one that has stuck with me 5+ years is the Ecotools Define Brush. This comes in a set with another larger fan brush, but I have washed this numerous amounts of times. As you can see, it still looks perfect and it's just as soft as the day I got it. And I'm just using the tip of the brush to apply the product instead of rolling it all over. I used to be really afraid of using large brushes like this for bronzer or for blush because I thought it would create a really muddy, overly contoured or blushed look. But actually the larger brush, because they're less dense, they're going to provide a lighter veil of color and in turn a more seamless looking application. This is the Pure Nude highlighter from Essence. And I'm using that smaller end of the Makeup by Mario brush. And then you can go in with the larger side of the brush to blend all three parts of the makeup together. Now for eyeshadow brushes. I know a lot of people don't use eyeshadow for their everyday makeup routine, but I still want to give you the recommendations that I often reach for. First off, I think everybody should actually have this in their makeup collection, whether you're using an actual eyeshadow or just an eyeshadow primer. This is the Real Techniques number 300 brush. It's perfect for buffing on any cream product or just like a light layer of powder all over. Next is any fluffy brush that has a dome shape on top. This is the Morphe Jaclyn Hill JH32. Rule for any eyeshadow look that you're doing is the darker the color, the smaller the brush you want to use. So that was our first brush for our transition all over wash of color. If you want to go in with a darker shade, I would recommend something that's pinched at the ferrule like this. Next, one of my favorite brushes ever is a small blending brush, perfect for any detail work on the outer V of the eye or on the under eye area. This is the Morphe and Jaclyn Hill JH40, or I believe the regular collection is the M506. For any all over shimmer or matte eyeshadow on your lid, you want to go in with a flat eyeshadow brush like this. Similar to the flat foundation brush that we used, it creates the same effect. You want the brush to apply as much pigment as possible to your eye directly, which means less bristles to blend with. Last but certainly not least, my favorites are pencil brushes. This is the Zoeva 240 Luxe Petite Pencil Brush. This is an excellent brush for really buffing out any eyeliner or eyeshadow along your lash line. And the reason that I included it, even though it has a very specific purpose, it's the easiest shortcut to providing a really elevated makeup look with the least amount of effort. If you don't want a super defined lash line, something a little bit softer is a larger pencil brush. This is the Morphe X Ariel A7. You can use this to highlight your inner corner, buff the lower lash line, or even buff the top lash line. This is not a makeup brush, but this is one of my favorite makeup tools, the Shiseido Lash Curler. Yeah. We are all done with the makeup look. I tried to go as in depth as possible in hopefully guiding you what to look for in your perfect brush and or give you some good recommendations that you'll hopefully incorporate into your routine. But let me know what your favorite makeup brushes are, or if you end up trying any of my recommendations and how they worked for you. Brushes are my favorite thing to collect, so give me more options. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.